2 weeks before takeoff, just as I was finalizing contractor timelines for a stadium build-out in Phoenix, my phone lit up with a family group text from my mother. "We've decided Ryan will go instead of you. He takes better photos." No hi, Sandra. No explanation. No apology. Just a verdict, cold and clean, dropped like a guillotine blade in a crowded square. I stared at the message, reread it, then let the silence of my office rise like floodwater. My name wasn't even in the sentence, just we undecided. That word again. The trip had taken me 3 months to plan, 10 days in Abu Dhabi, first-class tickets, a 5-star hotel poised on the edge of the sea, camel rides through the Liwa Desert, dinner suspended above the skyline, every detail hand-picked. A retirement gift for my father. A peace offering, maybe. A fragile gesture toward something like repair. And they gave my seat to Ryan, Jasona's fiancé. The same Ryan who once tried to sell me on a wellness app that already had 20 better-funded clones. The same Ryan who thought splitting the dinner bill was optional and disappearing to the restroom before the check arrived was strategy, not coincidence. The same Ryan who spent last Christmas pontificating about crypto ecosystems while using my Wi-Fi to download pirated audiobooks on entrepreneurship. I opened the Ida Borat's app. My name was still on the booking. For now. No tears. That's never been my language for betrayal. I function in spreadsheets. So I opened a new one. Titled it Abu Dhabi Reclamation. I began with the essentials: flights, hotel, tours, refund policies, embassy contacts. Next to each line, I typed one word in bold. Mine. Then I opened a second tab. Labeled it Debt Ledger. At the top, I typed their names. I bought the condo in 2018. 2 bedrooms, nothing dramatic. Mid-rise, new construction, walking distance to Central Bellwood. It was an investment, passive income, long-term equity. I'd run the numbers a dozen times. Locked in a 3.4% fixed rate, built out a maintenance buffer, made a plan. I hadn't bought it for them. But when Dad's contracts dried up during the pandemic and Mom called whispering about just needing a little time, I handed them the keys. No lease, no deposit, just an agreement in spirit. $900 a month, utilities included. Less than half of market rate. And even then, the payments were inconsistent. By the second year, I stopped asking. Asking turned to tension. Tension dissolved into silence. That's when Jasona moved in, after falling out with her roommates over something vague and dramatic. She arrived with 6 overstuffed suitcases, a corgi named Melon, and a ring she said was not official yet, but emotionally significant. They always had reasons. A delayed payment. A medical bill. A birthday brunch. I tracked each missed transfer like a surgeon logging failed vitals. $17,800 in unpaid rent by last November. I never mentioned it again. Not directly. I thought maybe the spreadsheet would insulate me from the rot of resentment. Like tidy rows and conditional formatting could hold back the slow drip of betrayal. Then they bought a new espresso machine. The same one I'd left sitting in my Amazon cart for months. Last October, Jasona accused me of being cold, because I sent her a Venmo request after she used my Instacart login to buy $142 worth of collagen supplements and eel rolls. It's not a business, Sandra, she said, like I'd violated some sacred code of sisterhood. But it always felt like a business. A bad one. High investment. Zero return. Emotionally insolvent. That morning, I updated the spreadsheet. Then I called a locksmith. If they wanted to treat me like a landlord, they were about to meet the paperwork. Ryan slipped into our lives like a contaminant, unnoticed at first, then suddenly everywhere, spoiling everything. The first time I met him, he shook my hand like he was closing a deal. He murmured something about leveraging ancestral equity while complimenting the natural light in my apartment. He wore fleece tech vests over luxury hoodies and tossed out venture firm names like birthday confetti. Jasona said he was a visionary in the co-living disruption space. When I asked her what that meant, she blinked and said, "It's kind of like housing, but smarter." He didn't have a job title. Just a string of slippery ideas, half-formed, half-borrowed, most of them orbiting the belief that other people should invest in his vision while he refined the pitch deck over oat milk lattes. Jasona adored him. Called him a futurist, like that made his detachment prophetic instead of parasitic. Mom said he was charming. Dad nodded a lot, more out of fatigue than agreement. When I announced the Abu Dhabi trip at Sunday dinner, I watched something flicker in my father's eyes, something like awe. He dusted off an old hardcover on Middle Eastern architecture, pointed to a weathered tab by the Burj Khalifa, said he'd always dreamed of seeing it in person. For 5 minutes, the air around us felt lighter. Like maybe this wasn't just a trip. Maybe it was repair. Then Jasona tilted her head and asked, "Can Ryan come?" "No," I said, measured and calm. "It's a gift for Dad. The seats are booked." Silence. Then a scoff, sharp enough to slice skin. "Seriously? You can't just add one more ticket?" "I've maxed the budget," I said, still even. "This isn't a vacation. It's a thank you." She stood, arms folded like armor. "You're just bitter. No one's ever picked you first." That line landed harder than she knew. Or maybe she knew exactly. I didn't flinch. I nodded, once. Ryan kept his eyes on his phone, scrolling like he was too evolved for conflict. Mom mumbled something about family. Dad stared into his mashed potatoes. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled up the airline portal and combed through every clause in the cancellation policy. Then I booked the locksmith for Friday at noon. The next morning, I called Ida Boratz, not for information, but confirmation. I already knew something was wrong. I just needed to hear it said out loud. The woman on the line was pleasant, precise. "Yes, Miss Barella, your reservation was updated last week. You were marked as a no-show due to a medical emergency." My breath stalled. "A medical emergency?" "Yes," she continued, like this was routine. "Your sister contacted us. She claimed you'd been hospitalized and wouldn't be able to travel. She requested the ticket be reassigned to her fiancé. Unfortunately, international tickets in this fare class aren't eligible for name changes." My voice didn't waver. "Did anyone attempt to use the ticket?" A pause. "Yes. A man tried to check in under your name yesterday. He was flagged by the system. There's now a fraud alert tied to the booking. We recommend contacting our fraud division." I did. I submitted ID scans, timestamped screenshots, call logs. Ida Boratz took it seriously. By that evening, I had the full story. Ryan had gone to the airport with my ticket, my name, and a TSA connection, a college buddy, according to Jasona's message. They had tried to pass him through using my identity. I opened the family group chat again. The message still sat there, smug and undisturbed. "We've decided Ryan will go instead of you. He takes better photos." My name. My seat. My silence. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I opened the spreadsheet. Next to return flight, I added, "Flag for misuse, security protocol." Next to hotel, I wrote, "Verify ID at check-in, mandatory." I moved down the list like I was deconstructing a home built on bad faith. At the bottom, I created a new section, legal risk, fraud, identity theft. Then I logged into the smart lock dashboard for the condo and changed the access code. No more shared entry. No more unearned sanctuary. Just before shutting the laptop, I looked back at the text one last time. I whispered into the dark, to no one. "I see you." And I did, clearly, for the first time. The first call I made was to the hotel, a coastal resort near Jira, booked under my name, my card. Would someone be allowed to check in without me present? I asked. "No," the concierge replied. "Government ID is required." Perfect. I cancelled the reservation. No refund. I didn't blink. Next, the safari tour, a private land cruiser, falcon show, dinner beneath desert stars. Cancelled. Then the yacht charter. The cooking class. The hammam spa. One by one, I unspooled the trip like cutting stitches from a wound that never closed properly. Each cancellation came with the same polite confusion on the other end. Slight concern. No resistance. The refund emails started to arrive. I logged each one under Ryan's name in my ledger. Return flights were trickier. Ida Borats couldn't void the outbound leg, it had been left unused, but they agreed to tag the return segment with a security screening notice. If the same boarding mismatch occurs, the fraud rep said, we'll escalate internally. I thanked her. And in that moment, I felt the quietest form of justice begin to stir. The first step was cutting the credit card. Clean. Absolute. Not a pause, not a doubt. Then came the locks. By nightfall, every doorknob in the condo clicked with new resistance. I installed 2 motion sensors and a video doorbell that fed directly to my phone. The system pinged every sound, every shadow. I printed a sign in bold black type and taped it to the front window. Unauthorized entry constitutes trespassing. Contact the property manager. Technically, they were never tenants. There was no contract, no paper trail. Just a long string of favors and guilt-laced phone calls that had slowly hardened into a 4-year occupation. I had let them stay under my name. That was a mistake I corrected the next morning. I hired a property management company. Paid the express fee for same-day paperwork. A formal lease was drafted, full market value, $2,950 monthly. No utilities included. First and last month's rent required up front. I asked them to prepare a legally binding 30-day compliance or vacate notice for delivery. Then I called Mark, a real estate lawyer I'd consulted once in a past life. He remembered my name. I gave him a tidy explanation, stripped of emotion, layered and calm. Mark was quiet for a moment. Then he said, let's do this by the book. By the time I shut my laptop that night, I still hadn't said a word to anyone in my family. But I had taken back everything they thought they could just keep. The silence I wrapped myself in felt cleaner than any hollow apology they'd ever muttered. The first text came in at 2:14 a.m. Deborah, what the hell? There's no hotel booking. The guy at the desk actually laughed at us. I placed the phone face down and went back to sleep. By dawn, 12 more messages buzzed through like flies. Where's our lease? We're locked out. None of the bookings are confirmed. Ryan, this is insane. This isn't just inconsiderate, it's borderline illegal. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. He fractured his arm on the camel ride. Do you even care? You've humiliated us, in front of his family. Do you understand what you've done? I did. And I had documented every detail. They had touched down in Abu Dhabi still believing I'd carry the burden, that I would still play the role, even after they'd erased me from my own gift. They expected comfort, curated memories, indulgence. What they got was logistical collapse. I pictured them arriving at the resort, smug and jet-lagged, already fantasizing about infinity pools and complimentary fruit plates. I could almost hear the confusion shift into dread when the clerk said there was no reservation under their names. I imagined Deborah's confidence unraveling, her voice turning sharp. Ryan pacing in designer sneakers, trying to bluff his way out with a borrowed tone of authority. They weren't victims. They were simply facing the truth of their own assumptions. I hadn't sabotaged them, I'd just removed the machinery they'd been riding on for years. Later that afternoon, a video notification popped up. Ryan, sitting on a stone bench, his arm in a haphazard sling. Deborah in the background yelling at a cab driver. I didn't bother pressing play. Then came another message. Deborah, you've made your point. We'll fix this. But this was cruel, Saren. Cruel. That word curled around me, oddly persistent. Cruel? Cruel is dropping someone from their own gift without explanation. Cruel is impersonating your sister to get through airport security. Cruel is telling your child she's less photogenic than your daughter's fiancé. I opened my browser. Found the old GoFundMe Deborah had set up for Stephen's upcoming surgery, still live, still struggling at $311. I donated $1. When prompted for a name, I typed. From the daughter who wasn't invited. Then I shut the screen and made tea. I had paperwork to sign in the morning. They arrived back at the house like it was just another Tuesday. Deborah waved from the car with her usual synthetic sweetness, as though we hadn't gone radio silent for weeks. Ryan stepped out slowly, dramatic in every motion, cradling his sling like a courtroom prop. His hoodie hung half off his shoulder, as though to say, wounded, but stylish. Jasona never exited the vehicle. I walked across the gravel to meet them, documents in hand. "This is your new lease," I said. "Rent is $2,950 per month. First and last due before move-in. Utilities not included. You have 30 days to comply or vacate." Deborah's face froze. "You're serious?" "I'm always serious." "You're evicting your own parents?" she snapped. "After everything we've been through?" "I'm offering them a legal agreement," I said, evenly. "That's more respect than I was given." Ryan took the packet from my hands and leafed through the first page, eyes darting like he was searching for a loophole he could manipulate. "This is absurd," he muttered. "This isn't how families treat each other." I looked at him. Really looked. At the man who wore other people's resources like designer tags and used affection as currency. "No," I said. "It's how boundaries work. And if that feels unfamiliar to you, good." I looked Ryan in the eye and said it plainly, without heat or ceremony. "Then it's a good thing we're not related." He gave a dry, incredulous laugh. "This all could have been solved with a simple conversation. You didn't have to set the whole thing on fire." I pointed to the lease still dangling from his fingers. "That was the conversation." He handed it back like it was contaminated. "I'll need to review this with my advisor." My eyebrow lifted. "Which one? Your mentor or the camel?" Deborah let out a scandalized gasp. Ryan's jaw twitched. I pressed the packet back into his hands anyway. "You said you wanted to build something real. Welcome to it. Contracts, compliance, rent due on the 1st. Consider this your final pitch deck." They didn't answer. I didn't wait. I turned my back, walked inside, and locked the door behind me with a firm click. On the way to the kitchen, I checked the mail and found the notarized eviction packet, right on schedule. Mark was nothing if not efficient. They never signed the lease. Not after the email reminders. Not after the drop-off from the property manager, complete with return envelope. By the 3rd week, they weren't even pretending to engage. On the 30th day, I filed for eviction with the county clerk. 2 hours later, Ryan sent a text. "You're opening yourself up to legal repercussions. My lawyer will reach out." I sent back a screenshot of the court filing. Jasona left a voicemail, breath hitching between sobs, accusing me of destroying the family over a vacation. The same Jasona who helped orchestrate a fake medical emergency and tried to smuggle her fiancé through TSA with my identity. Deborah sent an email, a carefully constructed elegy of past sacrifices. She recounted the night she stayed up sewing my costume for a school play, the lemon cake she baked from scratch when I turned 11. She ended with, "I never imagined you'd turn out like this. I raised you to be better." But none of them said the one thing that mattered. Not "I'm sorry." Not for the lies. Not for the theft. Not for calling me bitter, boring, difficult. They tiptoed around truth like it was a live wire, careful never to touch it. I forwarded everything to Mark. Every voicemail. Every message. Every smug threat dressed up as concern. His reply was curt. "Stay the course. Let the documents do the talking." By the end of that week, our court date was set. 5 days. I didn't make a single change to my routine. Same coffee in the chipped porcelain mug. Same solo dinners in silence. I showed up early to work. I started sleeping better than I had in years. The migraines I once accepted as a permanent condition vanished, as if my body finally believed it was safe. And slowly, quietly, I realized these people had never truly belonged here. I had simply mistaken proximity for love. 1 year to the day after the ruling, they returned. Same driveway. Same cracked stepping stone. Different arrangement. Ryan wasn't with them. Jasona hovered behind Deborah, arms crossed tightly across her chest like she needed the pressure just to hold herself up. Stephen leaned on a cane, older, slower. Even his silence looked tired. "We're not here to argue," Deborah said. I didn't reply. I waited. "We've been thinking about how everything played out. About you," she added, softly. "Jacob left," Jasona said quietly. "When the money stopped, so did he." Stephen cleared his throat. "They say I need surgery. Bones grinding on bone now. Medicare won't cover all of it. We just need a little help to get through." There it was again. Just until we're back on our feet. The old refrain, rusted from overuse. I reached behind the door and handed Deborah an envelope. She blinked. "What is this?" 3,000, I said. "For the surgery. Nothing more." Jasona stepped forward, something desperate in her eyes. "So, we're okay now?" "No," I said. "This isn't peace. It's a transaction." The air shifted. No one spoke. Stephen looked at the envelope like it might disintegrate in his hands. Jasona stared at the floor. Deborah's face cracked in a way I hadn't seen before, like she might cry but had forgotten how. "I'm not angry," I added. "I've just recalculated what I owe. And this is the balance." Deborah reached out, maybe to take my hand, maybe just to bridge the distance. I didn't move. They left slowly. No shouting. No pleading. Just 3 figures crossing the gravel, their outlines fading against a sunset the color of embers. I watched from the doorway, wondering if, on the drive home, they'd twist this too, turn it into a story where I was cruel or cold or broken. Maybe all 3. And maybe they'd believe it. I knew exactly what that envelope was. It was the final payment on a bond I'd stopped underwriting years ago. The message came a week later. "Until you fix this, you're no longer our daughter." No greeting. No punctuation. Just one cold sentence hurled like a stone through a window that had already shattered. I didn't feel anger. Not even shock. Just something dull and familiar, confirmation. A truth I'd sensed for years, finally stated out loud. I stared at the phone for a moment. It lay beside the envelope, still unopened, still uncashed. I let the silence expand around me like mist. Then I typed. "I stopped being yours the day you sold my seat." I didn't wait for a reply. I took a screenshot of both messages and sent them to Mark. He'd add it to the file, build the record. At this point, the paper trail was fluent to me, clean, objective, undeniable. Then I powered off my phone. I packed a weekend bag. No itinerary, no notes. Just movement. I left the condo without telling anyone. Rolled down the windows. Let the late summer air cut through the silence. The Oregon highway curved beneath me like a silk ribbon unraveling from somewhere far cleaner than home. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was earned. I stopped in a coastal town I'd passed a dozen times but never once entered. Checked into a modest inn with creaky floors and no record of my name. No family photos on the walls. No memories woven into the curtains. Just stillness. I walked the cliffs at dusk, let the wind numb my fingers, and watched the Pacific drag daylight out to sea inch by inch. The horizon swallowed the sun without apology. That night, I went to bed without checking messages, without monitoring anyone's balance or needs or manipulations disguised as affection. No late-night calls. No missed rent. No guilt-shaped requests. When I woke the next morning, I stretched beneath unfamiliar sheets and felt something in my chest I couldn't name at first. Relief. Maybe. Or the faint rhythm of self-belonging. I brewed the single-serve hotel coffee, sat by the window, and watched the fog peel back from the sea. And I thought about the seat. The one I paid for. The one they handed to someone else. For a long time, I believed reclaiming it would make me whole again. That undoing the theft might somehow repair the fracture. But sitting there, wrapped in the quiet, I finally understood something simple and complete. I didn't want it back. Not now. Not ever.